Hey everybody, Tom here with Hidden Beats, and today we're talking with Mr. Devin Cooper. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tom?
It's the end of the official work day today and get to have a nice conversation, so I can't complain, that's for sure.
Perfect.
So we're here today to talk about you, about your music, and about just what you do in the world. But for those who are new, can you give a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Devin Cooper, country singer, songwriter based out of Calgary, Alberta, and put out lots of music over the last couple of years. We got a bunch more coming out this year, and I'm excited to be here chatting with you.
I lived in Calgary once upon a time. Beautiful spot.
It is a pretty good town, or city, I
hmm
guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the first question is, how'd you get started in music?
Well, I was always surrounded by music growing up. There's always music cranked in my parents' house. And when I was about 5 years old, I started begging my parents for a guitar. And they were like, "You're 5 years old. In 2 weeks, you're going to want to do something different."
hmm
And it was about 6 months had gone by, and I was still begging and begging for a guitar. So they said, "Well, save up your money from your report cards and chores and allowance and all the little bit you get from Christmas and birthdays. And if you save up enough, eventually you'll have enough to buy your own guitar." So I
hmm
saved up for 2 years till I was seven and finally had enough to buy a guitar. And then I came out Christmas morning and there was a shiny black electric guitar sitting there. But it came with the condition that I had to pay for my first 6 months lessons with the money that
Okay.
I saved up.
Do you still have that guitar today?
I do still have it. It's actually not here in my little studio. It's still at my parents' place. I leave it
Nice.
there. Have something to play when I go back home.
hmm
And yeah, so I started playing when I was seven, and I could not put it down. My parents would have to tell me that it's 10 o'clock at night. It's grade two. It's time to go to bed. It's time to put it down. So it was never one of the things where they had to ask me to pick it up, but
hmm
they let me play as much as I wanted. They really encouraged me as I was starting out, and still do to this day. And grew up listening to a lot of Southern rock and blues, and that's what my dad kind of listened to, and my mom listened to hard rock and hair metal. So it was the
Okay.
combination of like Leonard Skinner and Motley Crue and Judas Priest that were being played in the house the whole time while I was growing up. So those are kind of all the things I started out playing when I was younger.
I mean, those are great names too. So you had a nice variety of stuff there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you
And
remember like the first album that you bought of your own, like when you were out shopping?
hmm, my parents had a ton of CDs at the house. We had one of those big tower CD players with the big tower speakers that everybody had in the 90s.
hmm
There was a ton of music in the house. Of new records that I bought, trying to think. There was so many, like my parents were still buying CDs. We get the what was it, the little catalog they'd send in the mail. You could check off what CDs you wanted and they'd send them to you.
Columbia House or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And so I remember going through there checking off records that I wanted that were things we didn't have, whether it was like Motley Crue Shout at the Devil or like an AC/DC CD we didn't have. Um,
hmm
I'm trying to remember the first one I actually went to the store and bought. It was probably after those flyers stopped coming out. It might have been like Motley Crue's Saints of Los Angeles or something like that in
Okay.
2010, whenever that came out.
Yeah, I mean that's a great album too. The first one that I ever bought for myself, and it's the weirdest one when I tell people, it's the soundtrack to Gross Point Blank because
Okay,
that had just a whole collection of songs that I liked from everywhere. And when I went look like buy my very first CD for my very first Discman, that was the one I bought just because it had everything on it.
that's awesome. Yeah, we had a lot of those like big shiny tunes and the
Mhm.
mixtapes that they used to send out, and then obviously making our own burnt CDs at home and to listen to. So there was always stuff like that that I was listening to as well.
I still have some of my wife's burnt CDs she found in like a folder or something when she was cleaning out the storage unit. There's just CDs in there from when
That's
she was a
awesome.
kid.
One of those big binders that you open up, you have in your car with like 100 CDs and you flip it
Yeah.
through it.
Yep. Those are always fun on the car rides too, because you're trying to balance looking for a CD while not crashing into somebody. And yeah, good times for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, you talked about some of these big names kind of influencing you getting into the idea of music, but who do you think influences your sound nowadays?
I think it's still a lot of those original bands that I grew up listening to. For guitar playing wise, Stevie Ray Vaughan was always one of my biggest influences on my guitar playing, and
hmm
still is to this day. When it came to the country world, and when I really dove into the songwriting aspect, that's kind of what got me into country music, is I always loved the storytelling aspect and how well crafted the stories were that everyone was singing in country music. And in that world, it was kind of the the Kip Moore, Chris Stapleton, Cadillac 3, where they
Mm.
had these great stories that they were telling, but they were kind of mixed with this like Southern rock music, I guess you
Yeah.
could say. And I didn't really know that that was a thing you could do in country music. Obviously, like growing up, if you're listening to country music, it's the AM station in your small town or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and they're playing all the classic stuff, and which is very different than Leonard Skinner and ZZ Top.
Yeah. Yeah, it has a different feel than that country rock versus the honky tonk style country, really.
Absolutely. And so when I really dove into country music, it was listening to all those bands like Chris Stapleton and Kip Moore and Cadillac 3, and they kind of always had that like rock edge to what they were doing. And I realized that I could take the country storytelling that I always wanted to do and mix it with these influences that I'd grown up listening to.
Hmm. Yeah, the Cadillac 3 is actually a favorite of mine too. I got to act, so I do photography outside
Okay.
of these interviews, and I was covering a festival, and the first time I ever heard them or seen them, and just kind of blew my mind with the energy they had on stage and just
Oh
the
yeah.
output they had for things.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. Actually, the first country show I ever went to, I got dragged to. I didn't want to go to it because I was not really in the country world at that time in terms of like going to shows and things like that. And it was the Cadillac 3 and Kip Moore. And
Oh,
that
nice.
100% changed my life. I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't know that that was something you could do in country music. I didn't know that that the conventional rules of country music could be broken and you could kind of mix these two sounds together.
Hmm. Now, what's your thoughts on, or I guess your favorite parts on the music scene from Calgary, from where you are? I mean, it's the mecca of country in Canada, really.
Yeah, it's just a massive community. Everybody works together, everybody writes together. There's a bunch of world-class studios right here in our city. Some of the best musicians in Canada are right here in our city,
Hmm.
and it is literally just a giant community. I remember when I was about 18 years old, I was at the Calgary Music Awards and I was nominated for Blues Recording of the Year. And I remember showing up to the awards and I didn't know anybody. There was all the rock bands that were like kind of little segregated groups. There was like the jazz artists and the blues artists that were kind of all spread out and everyone was in their own little group. And then there was
Hmm.
just this massive group of people. And I remember asking someone like, who are all those people? And they're like, oh, that's like the country world. And I was like, well, that's what I want to be a part of. How do I be a part of that? Like they all work,
Yeah.
they write together, and that is really what it is in Alberta. And I think in Canada in general, it's a just a really big community.
Yeah, the music scene is great. I get to talk to people at least 4 or 5 times a week, it seems like, and just everyone has such great things to say about the scene in general, but also the scene at home, because that's where you're putting out all your work, really.
Exactly. Yeah, no, Calgary's got an amazing scene. There's a ton of live venues, a lot of really big music fans, and like I said, some of the best players, best musicians right here in our city.
Hmm. So speaking of the Alberta Music Awards there, we're here mainly to talk to you today about your music, and you have a nomination for She's My Religion. Kind of how did that come about?
Well, for this year, for the Country Music Alberta Awards, She's My Religion had actually just come out right before the awards. So we were nominated for a bunch of the other work that we'd done throughout the last year.
Hmm.
And one of the awards for the music was Songwriter of the Year, and that was with a friend of mine, Drew Gregory. We got nominated for a song that he had recorded. And again, like talking about country music and the craft of storytelling and songwriting, it was really cool to be acknowledged from my peers for the songwriting work we had done and how we got that nomination. So it was really cool.
Yeah, I was reading up about some of the stuff. Like, I think you had something, if I'm not mistaken, about music design, or like something design that you were nominated for also.
Yeah, that was last year at the Canadian Country Music Awards. We were nominated for Creative Team of the Year for with
That's what it
myself
was.
and my graphic designer
Hmm.
for our whole album package and book we put out with along with my record. And so that was a really cool, again, nod from a bunch of people I've been looking up to for a lot of years.
And it's nice that you're kind of getting nods in different aspects too. It shows that your whole package is kind of put together real nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very fortunate to have a lot of good people working with me.
Hmm. So, She's My Religion. What's the story behind that song?
Brand new one just came out. I wrote it last May. I was down in Nashville and was there actually on a bachelor party for one of my buddies, but managed to squeak in a few songwriting sessions while we were down there.
Hmm.
And then my folks had actually come down as well. They'd never been to Nashville, so they came down for a few days. And it was the last night they were in town. And I got together with my buddy Chris and we were just shooting the shit, chatting forever. Had a great hang, talking about everything that we were excited about in each other's life and all the good things that were happening. And earlier that day, I had wrote down on my phone, "She's my religion." And I don't necessarily know what sparked it that afternoon, but I know that I remember thinking about the times when you get down, you find it hard to believe in yourself, find it hard to believe in everything that's kind of going on around you. And I'm very fortunate to have a great partner, and she's someone that I can always believe in. She's always a rock that is right there for me, and I know believes in me even when you get those moments of doubt. And so we got talking about that, and Chris is very much in the same situation where he's got a wife and a couple kids, and he can always lean on her no matter what.
Hmm.
And so we kind of just got talking about it and basically wrote it about how thankful we are for the people we have in our life.
I mean, I can definitely reiterate that feeling. My wife is the one that holds me up when I need to, and have kids running around too now, so that's my focus really.
Yeah, absolutely. How many kids do you have?
One like a 1.5 year old and one on the way actually.
Okay, amazing. Well, congrats.
Thank you. It's been kind of an interesting life-changing experience for sure.
I bet. Yeah, I don't have any kids, so I don't know what that's like, but I can imagine it's quite an adjustment and also pretty rewarding.
I'll say this, I find it really interesting. You can listen to a song, for instance, and it means one thing, but I found as soon as I had my daughter, music itself was changing meaning because the way you think about things was so different. And there's even a couple times where I'm rocking her to sleep and I'm listening to or have music on and tears coming to my eyes. I'm thinking, man, like that's so emotional. Just kind of
Yeah,
damn.
that's
So,
amazing. Amazing what music can do, and especially based on the context of when you're listening to it and how you're
mhm.
listening to it, of how it impacts your emotions for sure.
Yeah, gotta love it that way for sure. What's your process like when you're putting together your music? Do you have, I know you have writing camps, things like that, but when you're trying to flush out your ideas, what do you do?
I really love writing with other people. I know a lot of people write by themselves. I love getting ideas together, getting guitar riffs together, and I never really try and take an idea too far before I bring it in the room. I have a lot of people that I write with a lot, and I really trust them to kind of help bring my vision to life of and tell my story the way that I would say it. And so I always get these ideas started, but never take them too far because I always love hearing how they can bring things out of me when we're talking in conversation, and they bring out ideas that I probably wouldn't say. And as we get talking with them, they say ideas that they wouldn't say if I wasn't there. And
Mhm.
so it's a lot of little nuggets that I bring in, but I try not to bring in actually too much of a fully formed song when I go into a write.
Yeah, I guess you give it a chance to flush itself out in the long run.
Absolutely, and kind of chase it wherever it ends up going, because sometimes a song can end up taking a completely different direction than you had intended it to, and by having the ability to just chase that option, I feel like most times you end up with the best song.
Hmm. Now, what would you think? Or I guess so. Here's a good question I like to ask. What would you think your evolution has been through your music? If you go back to like 2015's Cross the Line to now, how have you grown with your music?
I think I've grown in the stories that I'm telling. Obviously, that's 9 years ago now that Cross the Line came out, and that was part of a radio contest I'd won in Olds. That was actually the last song I'd released that was just a solo write by myself. So I wrote that one on my own. And again, I would have been 18 years old. So you're more coming up with life stories instead of telling your life stories. And you're
Hmm.
kind of dreaming up these stories of things that you can talk about. And after the past 9 years of living and touring and traveling around and bringing in other people's ideas as well in our songs, I feel like the stories I'm able to tell are more honest and more true to who I am now and where I'm currently at, because I've been able to live and experience a few things. And obviously there's a lot more to live and a lot more to experience. And I hope that as I continue writing the songs, continue to tell the stories that I've lived and can be still true to who I am.
Hmm, for sure. Has anyone ever told you looking at your album art going from 2015 to now, it's like a chronicle of your hair growth?
It definitely is. We were just chatting about that the other day because we're working on a bunch of new stuff right now. And it was like, well, we can tell when Devin released this song based on how long his hair is. And I was like, Oh, I guess so. It's like maybe I should cut it. It'll look like it came out a couple years ago then.
Yeah, I was looking through them and I kind of just laughed. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So you can see the transitions of okay, clean cut, and then you get a little bit longer. Then now you got the long rock and roll hair, and I was like, oh, must have been going for something there.
Yeah, it's been a constant evolution. So if nothing else, you can see the visual evolution of me over the few years.
Hmm. Now I'm curious, what is the first song that you would introduce to a brand new fan? Like I call this the favorite child question because it's the one that it can change at every moment, but I think it's the one that you think people should listen to first.
I've been opening a lot of shows with the title track off my record, Good Things. I think it kind of gives a good, well-rounded answer to what my goal is for life is that good things take time. It's a long game. You got to work on things forever. There's a lot to learn, and it's just kind of good introduction to a lot of my beliefs and sonically a good representation of where I want to live musically.
Okay. Yeah, I like that because, for instance, if I'm brand new to your music, this is the question that I'm okay, how am I going to jump into this and where am I going to start? So I like the idea of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So every one of my interviews, I ask a couple fun questions, makes you think a little bit more, gets you a little bit maybe outside of the music itself.
Okay.
This one's my favorite one. I ask every single person, and it's the one's going to make you think the most. What's one thing you think should be asked more in an interview that's not asked enough?
Interesting.
And you can look at this from two perspectives. Maybe something that you haven't been asked enough in interviews, or if you're watching an interview, you might want to know more about from artists that you like.
Yeah. I think question. Oh man, this is a tough one. You're throwing me on the spot. I like
Hmm.
it. Um, the long moment of silence. Now I'm overthinking it. I think probably a question I haven't got asked a lot is what is your favorite part of the creation of a song? Is it the writing portion? Is it the recording portion? Or is it the then performing it live portion?
That's actually one I haven't heard yet, surprisingly.
Feel like a lot of people ask like what's the songwriting process like or what's the recording process like or what are live shows like, but instead of like what's your favorite part of the journey
Hmm.
when creating a song or what parts do you like about it the most?
That's one I'm gonna note down because actually that's one I've not heard yet. Definitely. What's your favorite part then?
I like pieces of all of them, but for me
Mhm.
the number one thing is playing live. And if I can take that song that we've then written, decided that it's worth recording, and decided that there's a message that's worth telling, and then being able to play it live and see the impact that the song has on the audience firsthand. It's really cool to release stuff and to receive messages from how it's impacted people. But when you can see it firsthand in person and see the emotion on their face when they're listening to a song, that is the number one goal and the most rewarding thing, I think.
And I mean, I guess really that's kind of what you're putting music out for is for people to hear it. So
Totally.
playing it live is just a whole different monster that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I playing live is my favorite part of the whole thing. It's
Hmm.
yeah, having the one-on-one connection and getting to see the audience and chat with people afterwards. That's what it's all about for me.
Now, as a fan of music, what's one of your favorite concerts you've ever been to just to go hang out and catch a show?
There's a few. For the atmosphere to be in, a couple of my favorite shows I've been in are like AC/DC and the Rolling Stones.
Mm, yeah.
Such like a high energy show in like a stadium of 100,000 people.
Hmm.
Musically, one of the best shows I've ever been to was actually just a couple weeks ago. A band out of Winnipeg, the Bros Landreth.
Okay.
And I think when I left that concert, I was the most musically satisfied I had ever been leaving a concert. Uh,
Hmm.
the skill on that stage of the musicianship and the vocal ability and their harmonies and the way they worked together as a band was just absolutely phenomenal. So for an atmosphere, a big show like in a stadium like the Stones or AC/DC, but in terms of like musicality, one of the best ones was Bros Landreth.
No, that sounds awesome. I think the for me recently a musicality one, I actually for the first time ever caught Big Wreck at the end of 2023, and to watch Ian like on that guitar at the start of like it's insane just what he does.
Yeah, I saw Big Wreck open for Motley Crue back in probably 2011 or 2012 in Calgary. And when
Hmm.
they came out and started playing, it sounded just like the record. I was completely blown away. And it gave me a whole new respect for Big Wreck and obviously Ian and everything that they do because of how great the show sounded live.
Yeah, it's always amazing when you can get that just perfect album almost rendition and just is like, wow, okay, so they really didn't have to do much to between recording and here basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's just how good they are.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. What's something on your go-to playlist that people wouldn't expect you listen to?
Hmm. I'm a big guitar nerd, big music nerd. So a lot of the like Ariel Posen, Joey Landreth, Theo Katzman, bunch of like weird musicians that are not necessarily in the mainstream as per se. Uh, but yeah, I love listening to yeah the musicians, the best of the best who are not necessarily playing the stadiums and putting on the biggest shows, but sonically some of the best stuff you'll ever hear.
Yeah, those are always fun when you just have that one that that's not everyone hears, but you're just like, damn, that's the one to listen to for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this one's a fun one. Who plays you in the movie of your life?
Oh man, I was asked this question like 2 weeks ago and I didn't have an answer. And so the lady who was interviewing me, she said Matthew McConaughey, and I was like, well, that's got to be like he's way too good to play me. So I was like, if you like ordered, if you ordered Matthew McConaughey or like Jason Momoa off like Wish.com,
I mean, I can see Matthew still doing it though. This is your movie, so you get to cast who you want, really.
it'd be like the Wish version though, definitely not like the full blown version of them. They too good.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to meet Jason in person at once upon a time, and it's just like, oh man, okay, you're just a force.
He's too tall, too jacked, to all things. He's just got long hair and facial
Mhm.
hair.
And
So like the dollar store version or Wish version of him.
yeah, and it was really funny. I had my wife with me at that point too, and I was going up to get a picture with them, and she was kind of standing back because he's one of my favorite actors, and he goes, "What? You're not coming to get a picture?" And she goes, "No," and he was actually hurt by it.
It's funny.
Yeah, he just was like, "Oh man, that's because he apparently he does this thing with you have couples, he like pushes the guys away and kind of flirts with the girls in the pictures just for that stick, but when he got turned down, he was like, "Oh man, what the hell?"
That's funny. He seems like I've watched a bunch of interviews and stuff with him and new docu-series he has out. He seems like he's a really, really solid dude.
Hmm. Yeah, he just seems like a fun guy, like just the guy that you can hang out with and just do whatever.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Now, the more important one I think right now is what do you do to stay grounded outside of music? Mental health is a big thing these days, so everyone needs a little bit of self-care, and we all have our special things. So what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a big thing that's actually a great question that you asked that doesn't get asked very often. So you can add that to your list of questions that you got to keep asking people. Uh,
Hmm.
Definitely going to the gym is a big energy release in terms of clearing your head and not keeping yourself from getting overwhelmed. Aside from that, I spend a lot of time up at my dad's custom motorcycle and hot rod shop working on cars with him. And we're always chatting on the phone about cars and bikes and projects we're working on and things he's working on. And it's a really good break to clear my head from music at the end of the day. Like last night,
Hmm.
we talked on the phone for half an hour or something like that, just about a bike that he's working on and things he's excited about. And it just, yeah, it's a good way to clear my head, keep me grounded, remember where I came from, and that there's a lot more going on than just the music that I'm working on.
Yeah, and there's still people out there getting their hands dirty doing things, and just kind of everyone does something different.
Totally.
No, that's nice. I mean, I stay grounded now because the kid forces me to. There's no way around it. When she wants something, she
Yeah,
lets us know. That's for sure.
totally.
Hmm. Now, what do you hope people take away from your music and as a whole?
I hope they take away I think the ultimate thing is the songs that I write and create. I want to be able to leave people with an experience and take them on a journey and help them through whatever they're going through, whether that's the hardships or the good times or whatever it is. I hope that the music that they hear can leave them feeling grounded and secure in whatever it is they're going through.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's nice to have that feeling of kind of security and stuff like that.
Totally.
Now, two more before we end off, and I think these ones are the perfect way to cap things off. Is what motivates you to keep pursuing your music career?
I think the people that keep showing up to shows time and time again, there's a lot of the same faces that show up to shows, and knowing that they believe in you and they believe in what I'm doing and that they want to see more and hear more. Another thing is the team of people that are around me, encouraging me and helping me move forward. And at the end of the day, uh, family keeps me going and wanting to keep working hard so that I can make my family and make everyone around proud of the things that I'm doing.
Hmm. And I mean that's important. Family is always number one for sure.
Totally.
All right, last but not least, are you happy?
Absolutely. Don't know if I have ever been happier than I currently am.
I mean that's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. So I hope we can just keep going up from here.
Hmm. That's all the points I have written down. Is there any kind of final fun words of wisdom you'd like to leave to people?
We got a bunch more music coming out. I'm excited to announce a bunch of shows we're hopefully going to be getting across the country this year.
Okay.
And I'm excited to hopefully see everybody in person.
Well, I'm based in Ottawa myself, so if you get out here, make sure to let me know. I'll come out to the show. But if you're looking for live coverage, I have my team is across Canada. I cover most of the major cities, so we can definitely probably get someone out there to cover a show for you.
Would absolutely love that.
Actually, I have a girl in Calgary too, so
Okay,
if
great.
yeah, so we can definitely stay connected on that.
Yeah, we'll follow up with you on a few things we have coming up this year. I've got a charity event that I do every year for Alzheimer's, as
Okay.
well as my album release a little bit later this year.
Yeah, definitely. If we can support charity events, we're always down to do that for sure.
Amazing.
Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Devin Cooper Music on all the socials. You can check out my website, devincoopermusic.com. And I'm
Awesome.
posting on there lots, so there'll be lots of new stuff for them to see.
Awesome. Good to hear. Well, it was great to meet you and kind of get to pick your brain and see what makes you tick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for chatting with me, Tom. It's great to
For
meet you as
sure.
well.
Yeah, I hope we get to do this again. I'm always down to catch up with old friends now.
Awesome. Love it.
All right, man. I will let you go enjoy the rest of your day, and I guess we're going into the weekend now, so that's always fun.
Yeah, have a great weekend. Enjoy some time with your daughter and your wife, and we'll catch
Hmm.
you next time.
Perfect. Catch you next time.
Thanks, Tom.
No problem. Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks, you too, Nicole. Hope you feel better.
Thank you.